Hi, everybody. My name is Mike Klein. I'm your host. Today, my guest is Ike Casey, Executive Director of ASA of Metro Washington Chapter. Welcome to the podcast, Ike. Let's dive right in. So question number one, where are you from? How long have you been with ASA of Metro Washington? And what's your background?
How you doing, Mike? Yeah, I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. Do you get that Southern accent?
I picked up on that, yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm from Charlotte, but I've lived in the Washington area for almost 40 years now. So I haven't lost the accent, but I try. I started out after college as a teacher, but my parents were they were construction association executives. My father was the executive director of the Carolinas chapter of NECA, National Electrical Contractors Association. And my mother worked for him. So we grew up with the NECA office in our backyard. So
Wow.
I've been dealing with subcontractors, particularly electrical contractors, all my life. After teaching school for a while, I became the assistant manager of NECA, Carolina's chapter of NECA. And then at that time, my mother was the first executive director of ASA of the Carolinas in Charlotte. And she retired. And so I took over for her, worked in the Carolinas for a couple of years. And then Tommy Parker, who was the national president back then, convinced me to move to Washington to work for the National Association. After a few years there, I went with I ran the independent electrical contractors and then the plumbing, heating, cooling contractors. And now I've come back to ASA where I belong. So I feel like I'm home.
So how long has that been?
A long time, over 40 years.
Well, that's awesome. I'm fairly new to ASA, but you're kind of legendary around from what I hear. So glad to have you on today and to finally meet you face to face.
Thank you, Mike.
So since you first joined ASA, and I mean, we could even go back further, to when you got started in the association business working with contractors. How has subcontracting changed over the years?
It's changed a lot. I mean, all the obvious things about internet and communications and everything, but really the main things that have changed are subcontractors just did the work. They didn't worry about contracts. They felt like they could trust the other people in the industry, so they would do the work and they get paid. It was a problem getting paid in the early 80s because the interest rates were up to about 21%. And the general contractors back then were making more money by holding the subs money than they were on the job, on the project. So things were pretty rough back then, but you didn't have to be a lawyer to be a subcontractor. And now, if I were to go into the business, I'd want a legal person on my staff because everything you do can come back to bite you. And it's usually in the contract. It's how well you negotiate the contract and the terms and how you manipulate the scope and the contract now that's so important to the success of a subcontractor. And the problem is, subs go out of business every day, but we don't talk about them. We don't talk about the ones we lose. But there's a lot of risk and there's not the return that it should be for subcontractors. So things have changed a lot. I could go on. I remember one case where I walked into a member's office and he was excited. He was bidding this federal project on one of the military bases down in North Carolina. He said, I'm stinking low, but I'm gonna make it up on change orders. So I think that kind of thinking back in the 80s probably has come back to bite us here in the 2020s because subcontractors thought they could do that. And now the owners are so skeptical of the subcontractors' prices that the subs are standing around waiting for payment for way too long.
So you received the ASA National Legislative Award this year. Tell us what that is and why do you think you were recognized for that?
Yeah, I was real surprised to get that. And I think Mike Oscar had a lot to do with that. I don't deserve anything. It's the members and the people that, without the members, we don't have an association. And the members really worked hard to pass some legislation. I think the most significant one that I was probably recognized for was the elimination of pay if paid clauses in Virginia. We've done some good things in the problem here in DC is we have to deal with 3 jurisdictions. So we're the Metro Washington, so we lobby in both DC, Maryland, and Virginia, and their legislatures are in session about the same time. So it's a lot of work in January, February, March to keep up with it if we're going to get something accomplished. But I think just my knowledge of what subcontractor issues are, and particularly contracts, has helped me get this award, and I do appreciate it. We have been successful in the 3 jurisdictions, primarily on prompt payment, working on fair contract clauses, and the pay if paid clause was the big one that got the most recognition.
So sidebar question, do you, I believe you've got staff in there in your office. How many folks are on your staff? And
it's Patty and me. So
just Patty and you.
Yeah, there are 2 of
Okay.
us. We do have a part-time bookkeeper, but it's primarily the 2 of us. And Patty does a lot of things for the, meeting planning and so many things that are important to the running of the association. But I try to do the legislative and a lot of the content issues.
Yeah. I mean, an army of 2 is not a very big army to do all that, all that work with. So that's a lot of props to you for getting all that done with you and Patty. That's impressive. And you mentioned a couple of the legislative issues, pay if paid, for example, that you've been successful on. What are the major legislative issues that you see that are important to subcontractors in today's environment? I know some of them are traditional, but is there anything new coming as well?
Well, I think we've got to find a way to deal with change orders. And Mike is working on the federal level legislation that would require contractors to be paid 50% of a change order, which is a step in the right direction. But I think we're looking at legislation in Washington to try to copy to see if we can find a way that the law can require that, after you submitted a change order, that you get paid with a certain period of time, so people know what that time frame is. It's not, we're trying to find a way to address that. We've still got other things to do in Virginia, in Maryland and DC with pay if paid, but I think looking at change order legislation is the most important thing we can do right now. I ask myself on another issue, why is retention required on bonded jobs? I haven't heard a good answer to that. And so I'm going to continue to ask that of the legal people as well as the legislators. But retention, I think, is outmoded. Every time you place a bill, you're losing 10% of your income, and you've got a plan for that in your cash flow, and it's not fair. We've tried to find ways to address it. You have to pay it in a certain period of time in Maryland. In 90 days after the job is completed, it has to be paid on private work, but we can't get that on public work. Isn't that a switch?
Huh. Wow.
But we're trying to do things to address that as well. And again, I think the final thing that we really need to do is really make sure that risks are fairly shared. So the risks are all pushed down to the subcontractors, and subcontractors are not in a position to push it back up. Some, a small percentage negotiate it fairly, but most can't. And so we need to find a way to make that more fair also.
Besides legislative issues, do you see any issues coming over the horizon that will have an effect on subcontractors?
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot on the use of 1099 employees, independent contractors. Uh, I think a lot of our members, whether union or non-union, are gonna, because both use 1099 workers, and they're gonna have to learn how to deal with that. It's it's kind of ingrained in the industry right now. Again, it's not fair because these workers aren't getting paid, their workers' comp and taxes and so forth, and they're not really independent contractors. They're really employees. So a lot of our members are wrestling with that and trying to figure out how to deal with it and how to get around those issues.
So I was going to say, is that a matter of the 1099s uh, not wanting to be employees, or the subs not wanting to hire additional people as employees?
No, it's mostly well, it's both, but the contractor can save a lot of money by using 1099 employees. So
Yeah.
I mean, the DC Attorney General did a study, and I believe the percentage was 37%, that those that use 1099s can save 37% per employee. And that's a big difference that can go to some company's bottom line. So there's that issue, but there's also an immigration issue. I mean, you've got a lot of people that have come here from other countries just recently, and you tell them you'll pay them, $100 a day, and they're very satisfied with that. They don't want any taxes taken out of that. So it's a very tough issue, but we've got to deal with it because some contractors are going to do it the legal way, the right way, and some are going to try to find ways around it. And it's just not a fair playing field when you do that.
And I guess the next question is, what do you consider to be the biggest challenge facing subcontractors in the Metro Washington area right now? Is that one of them, or is it everything we've talked about so far?
Yeah, I mean, labor is always the issue, but I've never considered labor to be an ASA issue. So I think the other associations deal with that, both union and non-union. And so I've never considered that to be a major ASA issue. But as far as the construction environment in DC, in the DC area, offices are dead. Our members were building offices for years, and now it's just stopped. And multifamily is still going strong. So we do have a lot of residential going on, high-rise residential in our marketplace. But as that slows down, members are going to have to figure out how to do more of this public work. There's going to be a lot of infrastructure work. And there again, you've got to comply with project labor agreements, PLAs. You've got to be able to deal with, the federal requirements that are with cybersecurity, for instance. That's going to be a big issue. So members are going to have to shift their thinking and their processes to cover all these different things. It's going to be a challenge.
That sounds huge. It's interesting to me that you said just now that you didn't consider labor to be an ASA issue. Could you expand on that a little bit? I'm interested in why not.
Well, we have both union and non-union members. And when you get into labor issues, then you start talking about PLAs. Now, to me, 1099 is probably a labor issue, but it's one that we have to address. We're not trying to get people caught. We're just trying to help them make the right decision and deal with the risk if they do use 1099s. But, we have both union and non-union members. And if we get into labor issues, we often cross over into one side or the other. And so, in Metro Washington, we stay away from that.
Okay. Okay. No, that makes sense. I know, for example, that ASA National and the foundation are very interested in workforce development, and I wasn't sure if there was some sort of crossover there that in terms of labor that you had in mind.
Yeah, that's important. Workforce development is important, but we're just limited in what we can do, and I don't think we can really make an influence on workforce and development that is going to make a big difference.
Can you share a local success story where Metro Washington's advocacy made a significant difference for subcontractors?
Yeah, advocacy is not just lawmaking. I mean, we talked about pay if paid, and we had a lot of general contract. I think most general contractors had that clause in their contracts, in their subcontracts. And now most of them kept them in there, but now we know it's null and void in Virginia. So that was a big change in this area. But I think advocacy is a lot more than just, legislation. I mean, we do a lot with the airport authority. I'm trying not to use those words because they won't mean anything to you. MY is our airport authority.
Gotcha. Okay.
And the other agencies that we work with in all three jurisdictions, to help that agency see ways that subcontractors can benefit. We're going to advocate this year with the owners, because every time we meet with general contractors and discuss the issues, they turn to the owner. And so we need to get more influence on the owner's thinking when it comes to the issues that we are bringing up.
So can you talk about how your chapter collaborates with other ASA chapters or other organizations as you're working towards your goals?
Yeah, we work with other chapters from time to time on their comparing our legislative issues with theirs, and our Subby Awards banquet, for instance, with theirs. That's our recognition of General Contractors of the Year. But I think the main thing we do on our local level is our lobbying efforts are through a group called ACE, Alliance for Construction Excellence. And it's made up of NECA, SMACNA, MCA, the Ironworkers, and I think I've covered everybody. So we have 7 members of that, and that gives us a lot more legislative clout than if it was just ASA working alone. So it's an important part of what we do. We do annual events with construction financial managers, CFMA, and also the Women in Construction, NAWIC. We meet with them. We have an event with them each year.
Are there any specific initiatives that your chapter is working on to promote fair construction practices?
Yeah, I think the main one is we developed what we call general contractor partner expectations. So we have 22 partners here in Metro Washington, and they're the big guys that everybody has heard of, as well as some of the smaller local contractors. And they support what we do. They support our mission of better construction through fair construction. And we developed it took a couple of years to do it, because we tried one thing and then another, but we now have these general contractor expectations. And it's a list of things that we expect of our partners as they become part of our organization. They're not members, they're partners, they're supporters. But we've been meeting with them individually to talk about these expectations, and that brings up so many issues that are valuable and really opens their eyes, and we open our eyes to some of the things, all the things we've been talking about: change orders, risk, CBEs, how CBEs can work with them. There are a lot of issues, the wage theft, all these issues come up, and it's been really good conversations. This is our organization, 4 or 5 of our board members meeting with the general contractor leadership. It's been very effective meetings.
I'm going to go out of order here. So you mentioned better construction through fair construction. Your chapter was the first to adopt that mission, and it's also been adopted now by ASA National. What will it look like if we achieve that mission?
Well, we've learned that fairness is an elusive concept, and what we think is fair as subcontractors is not always what the owner or the general contractor thinks is fair. And so that's why in these meetings, we kind of come to a meeting of the minds on what is fair in a lot of these situations. I think if we achieve that mission, then the subcontractor will be on a level playing field with the owner and the general contractor when it comes to so many of these legal issues, contract issues, risk issues, uh, payment issues. It always comes back to the privity of contract. That's something that I hear too frequently. The owner says, well, we don't have a contract with you, Mr. Subcontractor. So if you got a problem, just go to the general contractor. And the general contractor has certain priorities, and payment of the subcontractor is not their first priority. That they've got to get material on the job and install the job, get all the subs straight, and then they've got to invoice the owner. And if they get all that done, then they'll pay the sub. And payment of the sub is not the major issue. It's getting all these other things done and making payment a higher priority for the general contractor. So I would see if we achieved all this, that the owner would be more intent on paying for work completed within 10 days. 10 days. The GC would then transfer the funds that it's received from the owner the same day by ACH. So we're looking at 11 days for payment. You know, that would make a major difference in our industry. We don't have that now. And it's a dream to think that we would have it, you know, within the next, before I die. It would be a dream, but I'd like to see it happen. I mean, it could happen. It's just the atmosphere is not there right now. People think, well, we've got to check this, this, and this before we pay the painter. And then, you know, it takes forever for them to check the painter. And so while they're checking the paint and it's seeing if it's dry, the electrical and the dredging and the underpinning contractors, they're sitting around waiting for payment. It's just not fair.
You have any statistics, or can you say, just for context, how long does it typically take a sub to get paid? Is there any information about that?
Yeah, if the fastest paying sub, according to the study that I looked at by Sightline is one of our partners here at ASA. They did a study, and the fastest one was a company out of Wisconsin, I believe, that pays in 32 days. The top 25, only 4 of them pay within 45 days. So the best you can expect, the best you can expect is 45 days. So you invoice, you wait 45 days, and if everything's perfect, then you get paid. And, you know, usually it's 60 to 90 days. Most of our members would be happy with 45 days, but that's not fair. You know, we've got to change that paradigm so that subs get paid more quickly.
Yeah, there's companies and employees and lives that depend on paying bills, and to wait that long is frankly unconscionable.
It is.
So,
and our argument is the governments want us to see minority and women-owned businesses survive and thrive in their, you know, on their government work and also on private work. And at the same time, they put them through this ringer. You know, a small company that starts out, even a large company, if it has to wait 90, 120 days for payment, if they don't have a big line of credit, they're not going to survive.
yeah. Well, we're just about done here. I want to finish with a twofer question. Looking back on your career, what achievement are you most proud of in your role at ASA of Metro Washington? And also, what advice would you give to young professionals looking to enter the construction field?
Yeah, I'm proud of the fact that we have worked hard here at ASA, and both at ASA National and at this chapter, to define fairness. As I said, it's an elusive concept, but we're really working with all the elements of construction to define fairness. And I think as we continue to do that, it's going to be a better industry for everybody. And when we get you know, if you look at other industries and people that have to do work and then they have to wait 60, 90 days for payment. That's ridiculous. And the return on construction is not what it should be for the amount of work that you do and the risk that you take. You're not making, subcontractor owners aren't making the return they should be making. So as far as why get in the construction trades, it's hard work, and I wouldn't be the best one to ask about the trade itself. But if you wanted to be a construction trade association person, I have a lot of advice for you. So I love what I do. And if somebody were to ask me, should I go into this and become a trade association person, I'd say jump at it, because you're doing something different all the time. You're doing legislation, you're writing articles, you're doing a podcast. It's varied and it's fun, and you're dealing with great people, because subcontractors really are the salt of the earth. They're the people that are building these buildings, and they care about what they're doing, and they really care about their employees. And that comes out in everyone that I meet. I'm proud to work with this group.
That's awesome. Thanks for that. Having been in the construction association space for 20 some years now, I can echo everything you say there. It's amazing the people you meet. That's it for my questions. Is there anything that you wanted to add that we didn't get to cover that you feel like people should know?
No, not really. I appreciate everything. I'll be glad to help any of our chapters or any members that have questions. I got a call the other day from a chapter in New York that wanted me to help them with someone that is moving down into this area. So there are a lot of things we could do together if we talk and collaborate. So let's do more of that.
Terrific. Well, thank you for your time today, Ike. I appreciate it. And that is it for us today.
Okay.